Let the good times roll. Hi everyone, I'm Jacob. I'm the Cowhat Librarian, and I'm here tonight to talk about Just Roll With It by Veronica Agarwal and Durfey-Lavoie. Maggie is our heroine. She's in the 6th grade, attending a new school, and she can't wait to get started. But some things make her life starting this new school more complicated than it needs to be. You see, while it's not revealed until partway through the book, Maggie has OCD. She has to click the on and off switch in her house's hallway a certain number of times to say hello to the house when she returns home, or something bad will happen. She has to do things a certain number of times to make sure good things come of it. And she has a very difficult time making a decision without relying on a prop, a 20-sided die. You see, Maggie plays a Dungeons and Dragons-like game called Cat with her older siblings and their friends and significant others. And through the course of things, she developed this habit where she rolls and checks the number on the 20-sided die before she makes decisions. So if she's deciding between two foods at the cafeteria at school, she might decide that if she rolls 10 or more, it's going to be one food, and if she rolls 9 or less, it's going to be another food. So on her first day of school, she meets a girl who's interested in being friends with her, and they bond over common interests. And this girl, Clara, asks if Maggie wants to be friends. And Maggie checks her die, and it's a 6. And so the most she can offer up is a weak-willed, well, maybe. And Claire's disappointed because they'd already bonded over their interests. But she heads off, and Maggie heads off, and in the course of things, they do become friends. Maggie stands up to bullies on Claire's behalf at school, and they enjoy talking at length about their favorite comics and books and so on. And after a while, Maggie gets Clara involved in playing Cat. And they eventually join a games club in their school where they get to play with a whole nother group of people. And it's fun. But Maggie's still dealing with her OCD. And there's another thing that's going on. There's some weird rumors going on about things happening around the school. Some rustling in bushes, and some older kids joking about an enormous snake that will eat the 6th graders. And that plays out in the backdrop, increasing Maggie's worrying day after day after day as she wonders how she can protect herself from the snake, how she can protect others from this creature, whatever it is. It's pretty great. I don't know anyone with OCD, but the folks who created this graphic novel, they sure made me feel like what it might be like to have it, if it were the type that Maggie has. By the end of it, I was sympathizing with her and understanding from her perspective why she has to roll the dice and let fate decide, and why she has to say hello to her house by flipping the light switch. I sympathized with her. I could easily put myself in her shoes because she was so well written. She was such a great character. There's so much emotional depth provided to the reader, I guess, that I was compelled. I started reading it. Okay, if I'm being perfectly honest, I borrowed it at work because I saw it on the shelves, and went back to my office and sat down and read a dozen pages and thought, hey, this is pretty good, and put it down and went back to my other work. And a half hour later, I picked it up again and read about 8 or 9 more pages and plunked it down and got back to my real work. And I had a heck of a time putting it down. I read straight through my lunch break to read it and finished it up very, very quickly that night. I enjoyed it a lot. I recommend it. I hope the creators carry on collaborating and come up with more stuff because I'd love to read it. Now, with that said, there are spoilers ahead because I have to talk about the deal breakers. So I'm getting into nitpicky territory here for some of this stuff, and I apologize for that, but I'll get the nitpicking out of the way and then I'll get to the big stuff. There are one or two spots in this book where the transition between pages and topics of discussion for the character weren't handled as gracefully as I would have liked. There were one or two places where I thought pages were stuck together because of the abrupt topic shift, and I had a hard time following what was going on. And it was fairly limited in scope. It only happened a few times, but it makes me feel like the creators of this graphic novel or their editors maybe could have pushed for the insertion of another page or a slight small final panel at the end of a particular page just to better illustrate the transition, perhaps. It wasn't a major deal, but it would have helped it flow better from my perspective. The art style, while I love it, it's simple and clean and colorful. The art style is great, but because of the cartoony nature of the characters, Maggie and her friend Clara feel much, much, much younger than 6th graders. Honestly, it feels like they're maybe 7 or 8, and her older siblings feel like they should be about in the 6th or 7th grades. It felt like it aged the characters down, and it made it just slightly harder to believe they were at the stage of life they were at because they felt so young and so small. I realized it was a deliberate stylistic choice, and maybe it feeds into how Maggie sees the world, but it just, if the characters had looked a tiny bit older, a tiny bit less, I don't want to say chibi-fied because that's not really it either, but if their proportions were a little different, I think it would have made the artwork better for me personally. And last but not least, I'm going to call this one Gator Ex Machina. Through the course of events, Maggie goes on a field trip to an animal sanctuary where they learn that this place can take care of hurt or sick animals, and they learn about albino animals in the process, ones that are born with white skin and differently colored eyes, and how rare they are. And while Maggie is dealing with her OCD, she has internal conversations with herself that actually reminded me a lot of those in the video game Celeste, for any of you who've played that. And it's this giant white dragon-like lizard creature. And so those two things happen, and then late in the book, she and her friends discover what the creature has been around their school this whole time, and it's a baby albino alligator that just happens to look like the creature in her visions when she's dealing with her OCD, that just happens to be albino like the other one she learned about at the animal sanctuary, that just happens to be able to be helped by that same animal sanctuary. It was just a huge pile of coincidences for what honestly wasn't that big of a payoff to me. So that level of coincidence was a little bit frustrating because I bought into how real the character was and how real her struggles were, and the coincidences brought it back to just being a graphic novel. A very good graphic novel, but just a graphic novel. If you liked things like Sunny Rolls the Dice by Jennifer Holm, you'll probably get a lot out of this, and vice versa. And I recommend it. Head down to your local library and borrow it. And while I'm on the subject of local libraries, if you appreciate the services your local public library offers, please take a couple minutes and let the powers that be know how you feel. Talk to your city council members or your provincial MLA and tell them that you value your public library. We're at a time where a lot of public libraries are struggling to find sustainable funding so they can continue to provide the programs and services people need. And even a couple of good words in our favor never hurts. With that, thank you for listening to me talk about this graphic novel. By all means, please like, please subscribe, and please check back and see what else I have to talk about from the Cowhat Library. Thank you. Bye now.